You do not have to be good, says poet Mary Oliver. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. That's what embodied spirituality is all about. Let the soft animal of your body play an important role in your spiritual realization. Let it teach you something, take you into truth. And I'm not saying that the body and its extension in the physical world is the sole source of truth. Embodied spirituality is not exclusive or extreme necessarily. Mind matters too, of course. But it does insist that we stop seeing our bodies as stumbling blocks or as irrelevant, so that we have to walk on our knees through some desert repenting. Some folks call embodied spirituality an emerging spiritual ethos in the West, but leaders of our Unitarian Universalist tradition, leaders in our tradition, have been calling for it for a very long time. For example, Ralph Waldo Emerson, speaking in 1838 in his Divinity School address. His listeners are that year's graduating class of newly minted Unitarian ministers. And one of the things that he says to them is this. He says, "That which shows God in me fortifies me. That which shows God out of me makes of me a wart and a wen." What he's saying here is that the theological doctrine of the incarnation, which is God taking on human dimension and form, is true of everybody, not just true of Jesus. He is relentless in his critique of the view that sees Jesus as uniquely God and the sacred as something from outside of nature that has to break into our world and jar the natural course of events in the form of a miracle. He is adamant that Jesus' true teaching about himself was that he was a person who was God-inspired as much as any person potentially can be. Now, Emerson's critique was not just theological, it was also practical. He wanted those newly minted Unitarian ministers from 1838 to know that when you extend the doctrine of the incarnation beyond Jesus, when the divine is in everything, well, your preaching has got to change. You have to preach differently. You have to preach about the stuff of life that helps people recognize God in all of it. He says, there's a little God in there, right, Jude? He says, "I once heard a preacher who sorely tempted me to say, 'I shall go to church no more.'" A snowstorm was falling around us. The snowstorm was real, the preacher merely spectral. And the eye felt the sad contrast in looking at him and then looking out the window at the beautiful snow. He had lived in vain. He had not one word intimating that he had laughed or wept, was married or in love, had been commended or cheated or chagrined. If he had ever lived and acted, well, we were none the wiser for it. The capital secret of his profession, namely to convert life into truth, he had not learned. That is it. Life is such, it is saturated with divinity so that it can be converted into truth. God is in the beautiful snowstorm, and she is in all of nature. God is in the laughter, God is in the tears, in marriage and in love, in all the ups and downs of our lives. Life is like that. Don't show God out of me. Do that And you know what happens. You make of me a wart or a wen, which happens to be a painful cyst. That is what a wen is. Don't make me a wen. I don't want to be a wen. But besides preaching, Emerson could equally have spoken about any number of other spiritual disciplines that engage us bodily and thus reveal divinity. And I'm going to take up the baton from Emerson and do that right now. Starting with labyrinth walking. Labyrinth walking. How many of you were here January 1st when our UUCA labyrinth completely covered our sanctuary floor and the worship for the morning was entirely in the contemplative mode? You guys, some of you showed up. Great. We're planning on offering this experience a couple more times this year. So if you didn't get a chance, you'll want to do it then. It was wonderful. Stay tuned. But the particular power of labyrinth walking is in how it integrates mind and body. The mind, it has all sorts of pat answers. You know, the monkey mind, all sorts of pat answers about life. That, for example, sometimes you have to turn your back upon a goal to get there. That sometimes when it seems you are farthest from your destination, well, that's when you suddenly arrive. The mind knows all of that. We have all sorts of tidbits of wisdom in us. But what happens when you realize all of these answers with your feet? Your feet turn away from the goal, but then they double back again, and somehow you are closer. Your feet are seemingly far away from the destination you yearn to be at, and then you turn the corner and suddenly you're there. There is a quality of knowing here that brings tears to one's eyes. Give yourself to labyrinth walking and you will come to know some spiritual truths in the most profound way. What it does is enable the soft animal of the body to teach the mind and to take it into depths it cannot get to on its own. And so does yoga practice. Just a few moments ago, we saw Anandi perform some asanas, or physical yoga poses, powerful, graceful, centered. Whatever the asana looks on the mat looks like, whatever that looks like, it incorporates some kind of bending, some kind of stretching, some kind of tension. And yoga instructors are constantly telling you, do not forget to breathe. Don't forget. Breathe through the stress and the tension. Stay with it. Keep things flowing. And it's specialized breathing, by the way, called Ujjayi breathing. It's like you're trying to fog up a mirror. Just imagine what you need to do inside your throat to fog up a mirror. Sort of like that. It's that, or you're trying to sound like Darth Vader. Either one. You guys remember Darth Vader, right? I remember a week. Shut up, Don. So I remember a week in Asheville last summer when I went every day to the Asheville Yoga Center. I still have a bumper sticker from that place which reads, "My other vehicle is a yoga mat." So I'm in class one day. The instructor announces the theme of freedom. We're going to explore freedom. And it makes me smile. I think of all my years teaching philosophy, all the theories of freedom that I know. Am I really going to learn something new in this crunchy, granola, hippie, woo-woo space where everybody has a tattoo or three? It is Asheville, after all. So we get busy, one asana after another. Stress and tension are happening. Believe you me, they are happening. And at one point, the instructor comes nearby and he says, "Try to relax your face," which makes me want to punch him in the face. Because I am in the middle of some twisty, complicated, I can't even do it in the suit, pretzel-y thing. It's happening for me. And my muscles are screaming, and I'm sweating like crazy. But then I realize, oh my God, yes, that is freedom. It is freedom to feel stress in one part of your body and yet allow other parts to stay loose, to not let tension invade everything that you are. I left class with a general theory of freedom that I thought was super cool and unique and interesting. And here it is. Freedom is a capacity to keep one's main focus on staying fluid and flowing even as a part of you pinches, hurts, aches. That's just God saying, listen to the preacher. Listen to the preacher. Freedom is a powerful capacity for this. It is so practical. Fact is, there is always something that is pinching. If it's not something in my private world, then it's in the larger world, folks murdering each other with guns, politicians who are immoral and incapable. The suffering of the poor, the suffering of the transgender, the suffering of immigrants, the suffering of all those who are so very vulnerable in the space, out of this space. There's always something going on, and it's always been so. But in these latter days of what I want to call enforced world citizenship, which is enabled by the 24/7 news cycle, the internet, Facebook, Twitter, we are plugged in. Our nervous systems are plugged in, and we can't escape. So my nervous system feels stressed out, and I'll bet yours does as well. Therefore, parts pinching always. And so, try to relax your face. Don't allow yourself to be swallowed up. Stay hopeful. Allow peace. This is the dearness of freedom. We can each come into powerful realizations as we practice our chosen physical disciplines. There's so many to choose from. If not walking the labyrinth or doing yoga, it can be qigong and tai chi and also singing. And how about doing all three at once, like we saw our awesome choir do? Just do it all at once. Or it can be dancing. It can be some creative art. It can simply be observing the cycles and rhythms of nature and experiencing what Shakespeare called sermons in stones. Endless possibilities where the soft animal of the body can be our teacher. But now, what about those times when it feels like that soft animal has betrayed us? Here, we do not so much choose a spiritual discipline as we are chosen, or better yet, we are forced. We are forced upon the path. Illness forces us into a physical discipline. Aging forces all of us onto the path. One statistic says that 1/3 of Americans will be diagnosed with some kind of cancer within their lifetimes. And that impacts the rest of us who will walk with them through the valley of the shadow of death and beyond. No one chooses this, it just happens. And so now what? What comes to mind is a Japanese tradition of mending broken objects called kintsukuroi. As part of the mending process, kintsukuroi artists accentuate the damage by filling in the cracks with gold. They believe that when something has suffered damage and has a history, it is more beautiful. It can't be cured in the sense of returning it to how it used to be. It cannot be cured, but it can be made whole. And That distinction between being cured and being made whole, that is key. You see, we start moving into a realm of paradoxes, says Rachel Naomi Remen, a medical doctor who specializes in the care of folks who have life-threatening illnesses. Sometimes illness evokes health in people. People who are not physically healthy, they can seem very healthy, very alive. And some of the most boring people are those who are jogging and they're eating healthy food as if the physical health of the body was all that mattered. They're the most boring people ever. Ultimately, her point is this. True wellness is not an absence of pain or illness. It's about the presence of larger vision and meaning. Physical suffering is just not the worst thing that can happen to us. The worst thing that can happen to us is not believing in anything worth suffering for. An illness like cancer or inevitable aging can teach us to reimagine how we orient ourselves in life. One orientation is outside in. That's when one's physical condition determines how our spirit will be. So if our body is ill, well, then our spirit must fall in line and be ill as well. But life from the opposite orientation, the inside-out orientation, that is sheer spiritual triumph. It means that even when the body is suffering, there can still be a healing of the heart. There can be gratitude for the gifts of life, even if life is imperfect. There can be forgiveness of self and others and of the universe. There can be reconciliation with one's body, where we learn to accept it as it is and live into a different, a newer lifestyle, a more appropriate lifestyle. There can even be a deeper empathy for others who suffer, and out of the infinite depths of the divine spark within, that vast well of compassion, we would seek to be healers. What kind of people are we going to be? Are we going to be outside in people, or are we going to be inside out people? Illness or aging become our spiritual teachers too. They open our eyes to far more than we ever thought possible. It doesn't mean we stop feeling fear. It doesn't mean we stop feeling sad, that we never feel sad. It does mean that we resolve to show up to life every day, every minute, no matter what. One wisdom teacher says that all spiritual paths have 4 steps. Show up. Pay attention. Speak your truth. And then do not attach yourself to the results. The soft animal of the body teaches us that. Emerson teaches us that. We don't have to walk on our knees repenting. Just let the soft animal love what it loves.